There's a lot going on in this movie.
It was like I was watching it for the first time.
I like this movie.
It has a special place in my heart.
Very close to my heart.
This was a good one.
I want to like this movie.
What? Seriously?
I loved it.
Very flat, kind of boring.
This movie blows me away. This movie turns me on.
Terrible. It is terrible. All these keys everywhere. Influences, baby.
Huge, huge fan.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Hello, and welcome. Howdy doody out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have landed on, look at that green title behind us, Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast where two guys get together. We talk about horror, science fiction, films, TV shows sometimes, key influences on the particular topic of the week, and then things that it in turn influenced down the road. We've been doing it for a while. If you're new to us, we'd love to know how you found out. Leave us a little comment down below and say, hey, this is how we heard about you guys, and subscribe and like and do all those things too, of course. And if you're returning, we're glad you're returning to us, and it's going to be a fun episode today, I think. My name is David. I'm here with my really good friend, Tim. We've been doing this for a long time. Tim, what have you been doing this week, though? We usually start with, hey, what's happening in genre world?
Oh my gosh, I have just been on a roll. Well, we mentioned last week that we had ventured off into our sub-genre of choice. We did the Lord of the Rings and went into the fantasy world. And this week we're going a little bit into the mystery suspense world. Mm-hmm. And I decided to keep in flavor with our topic of the day. So I watched a little movie called Notorious.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember this movie. This is actually one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movies. I had not seen it in a long time, and I was hoping that I remembered it well, and I did. It is absolutely as good as I remember it being. It came out in 1946, which is a few years after Shadow of a Doubt in 1943. Mm-hmm. The cast is phenomenal. It's got his regular Cary Grant, who did like 5 or so movies with him. Ingrid Bergman is in it. Claude Rains is in it, and a deliciously wicked mother of Claude Rains, played by Leopoldine Constantin.
Okay.
Or Constantin, however you say that. I don't know if you remember her. I guess she's Eastern European, but she is one great villain.
Excellent. Okay.
A brief synopsis. In order to help bring Nazis to justice, U.S. government agent T.R. Devlin recruits Alicia Huberman, the American daughter of a convicted German war criminal, as a spy. As they begin to fall for one another, Alicia is instructed to win the affections of Alexander Sebastian, a Nazi hiding out in Brazil. When Sebastian becomes serious about his relationship with Alicia, the stakes get higher, and Devlin must watch her slip further undercover. And of course, they're in love too. So got the little love triangle going. This movie scores 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. I totally agree with it. I'd probably bump it up to 100. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Hitchcock's movies. The suspense is off the charts, because if you don't know this story, and pardon me spoiling a nearly 80-year-old movie, once it is discovered that she is spying on him and his mother begin to slowly poison her. And she doesn't realize it right away. And you're like, don't drink that cup. Don't touch that cup.
Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember this movie. I think I've only seen this movie once.
Oh, you need to see it again.
Yeah.
It is definitely in my top 10 Hitchcocks. Maybe not the top 5, but definitely the top 10. So,
well, the topic of the day inspired me, and now I've made this whole list of what I want to rewatch, what I want to watch again, what I've never watched of Hitchcock's. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so that's
definitely a great
what I did.
Interesting. I was bitten by I guess your genre bug, the horror genre bug, went to my list and said I need to stay in the same mindset, blah, 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 because we just left fantasy and I didn't want to jump into sci-fi yet. So what would be a good suspense on my list of, oh, Tim has said I need to watch this and I haven't. And the one I stumbled upon, I'm going to read the synopsis and you tell me what it is. I know you'll know, but uh, a single mother and her child fall into a deep well of paranoia when an eerie children's book manifests in their home.
It's the Babadook.
Yeah, yeah. Many horror fans and people have said, I need to watch this movie, and I never have. And about 10 minutes into it, I remember us, I think, first talking about it a few years ago or whatever, and you had said, You just got to have patience with a screaming kid." Because
And that kid,
both of
he is
us,
obnoxious.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But the movie grew on me like every 10 minutes. It was getting better and better and better. And I was going, oh my God. I thought she was brilliant. I thought the story itself as this metaphor for guilt and mental illness and all of those the twisted thing, literally losing your grip on your parenthood and everything else was just phenomenally
I
done.
think it would
And
pair up nicely with Cujo. And
ooh,
Cujo has a screaming kid in it too.
yeah, yeah, that would be interesting. And the ending of it with this whole, you can finally accept the trauma in your life, but it will never go away. So what do you do with it? And she puts it in the basement and still feeds it and but keeps it under control and everything else. And I thought that is so cool. That was a way to do oh, could we do a sequel? But we don't care. It could be, but yeah, but it doesn't matter. And I'm so glad they haven't.
She's a great actress, and we have
Very
seen
good.
her in something else recently, and I can't remember what it is.
I think you're right because I
Yeah.
remember trying to look it up and say, what have I seen her in? Because
Either
she's
that or
really
we
good.
talked about it in a genre week or a Coming to Get You, but I know we have mentioned her since. It's an Australian film, right? I think she's
Yes.
Australian.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible performance going to the school and talking to people and everybody else. And you can tell that she's just exhausted and not sleeping and everything. It was really, really good. And I'm glad you recommended it because you've been recommending it for years and saying
Yeah,
you
well,
got
it's
to see
been
this.
out there for a while. I think I saw it on Netflix when I first
Yeah, I
got
mean
it.
it's 10 years old. It came out in 14.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, really, really strong and written and directed by by a woman. Not that I have gender bias, but that was really good. I liked that a lot. So yeah, that's what I did. I did scary and suspenseful and tried to keep in the mode of what we're doing today.
Yeah, you got me thinking there's obviously a lot of female directors now, and I can't remember when that started, if it started before then or after then, and whether or not she was a leader in that. But
Yeah, I can't remember.
no,
I
me
mean,
either.
in that, I'd have to go do some research of that particular year and see
Yeah,
what was happening then. Because remember that you had It Follows, and I
it
mean,
no,
several of
it
those that
follows was
have
2013, wasn't it?
I think so,
Yeah,
so it's around that same time where we have the female protagonists that were actually the strong ones. They're the heroes of it, not the
yeah. I
ones
was
that's going to
talking
run
about
and
female
fall.
directors, but yeah, okay,
Oh, female directors as well. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
true.
okay. Well, that has nothing to do with today's movie because today's movie is directed by a man that was very much known for being a little bit of a womanizer, even though he
Predatory
collaborated
almost.
with his wife on almost every film.
Yeah.
Look at you going all black and white on me.
Yeah, we got to. Yeah.
Um, well, today I mentioned earlier we're going into mystery suspense genre. We're going
Hmm.
back to a little 1943 movie directed by Alfred Hitchcock called Shadow of a Doubt.
Hmm.
Well, we'll get into our personal stuff. Let me do a little bit of a synopsis.
Yeah.
This movie basically is about a killer. It opens up with Charlie, who is played by Joseph Cotten, in his apartment. He seems to be surrounded by like cash and jewels and stuff, and he notices some people sneaking around outside and decides he needs to make a break for it because he's been killing widows and stealing their money.
Has he really? Do
Well,
we
he's
know?
a suspect in the Merry Widower or Merry Widow Killer.
Mary Widow Strangler, I think is what they
Yeah,
call it, because
yeah.
he
The
strangles.
Merry, I want to say Merry Widower, but it's Merry Widow because he would
Yeah,
be,
because they're widows.
they're the widows, right?
Mhm.
But anyway, he decides he's got to split town. So he calls his family out in Santa Rosa, California,
Mm-hmm.
where he has a sister and a brother in law and a niece named Young Charlie. To make things confusing, there's an old Charlie and a young Charlie that's female.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he decides he's going to go stay with them for a while. Well, when he gets there, they're all smitten with him because he's giving them gifts. He gives his sister a fur coat. He gives his brother-in-law a watch. And he gives young Charlie a ring. She happens to notice that there's a different inscription in the ring, different, like initials to somebody else, not her. So he says that the pawnbroker must have rooked him. But shortly after that, two guys show up. It's the guys that were outside his apartment earlier. They're investigators, and they pretend to be like census takers or like something where they're like interviewing families, but they're really undercover, of course. The young Charlie suspects this. She confronts one of them. They end up becoming a love interest later on in the film. But he tells her they're after the Merry Widow Killer and that they suspect her Uncle Charlie is that person. However, there is another suspect somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, the other suspect gets killed. And all of a sudden, it's misdirected to make you think that perhaps he isn't the killer. But young Charlie starts suspecting more and more that her uncle is a murderer. And I don't know if I should go on and explain the ending. Should I? I
It's
guess I
kind of an old
can. I mean,
movie.
it goes
Hopefully
back.
people have watched it.
Well, that's true. And young Charlie, well, I don't once old Charlie knows that young Charlie suspects him, weird things start happening. Like all of a sudden she almost falls down a flight of stairs because one of the steps has been tampered with. And there's one point where she's going to start the car and gets locked into the garage, which is one of those garages that's separate from the house, and almost asphyxiates. But a neighbor, and he's in the house turning up music and stuff so that people can't hear her screaming and beating on the door. And a neighbor happens to come by and hear it. And Charlie runs out there and pretends to be the hero when he's actually the one that was trying to kill her. Lastly, Charlie somehow gets off the hook, but young Charlie says, "You need to leave or I'm going to kill you." So he leaves, but for some reason, she gets on the train with him as he's leaving, and he almost pushes her off the train. But last minute, she flips things around and shoves him off that train right into the front of an oncoming train. So he goes splat. And that's basically the ending. They never really proved that he was the Merry Widow Killer, even though the investigator and she know, and we assume they go off and live happily ever after. How's that for a
Yeah,
synopsis?
pretty much. That's basically it. You did good.
I went a little bit too much in detail, probably. Have you ever seen this movie?
I have not. I had never seen this movie.
I hadn't either, and that's why I wanted to do it.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, add it to the collection.
And I had read that this is Hitchcock's favorite movie, and I was like, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. And it is good, but it's not my favorite by any means.
Not my favorite. And I really struggled with the first half of this movie. I think it didn't pick up until the library. After that, suddenly I went, oh, okay, now it's working for me. And I just think it's earlier Hitchcock. So this was, I think he had already done 39 Steps at this time,
Mm-hmm.
but hadn't done the big stuff. He hadn't, like Notorious, you mentioned Notorious. He hadn't done that
3 years
yet.
later, right?
Or Strangers on a Train, Dial M, all the ones that when he hit his stride, in my opinion. So I think he was still learning here.
I
I think
totally
this
agree.
movie, I think this movie is very well shot, a very well filmed. The cinematography. It has a lot of his tropes already, from suspense to the audience's voyeur, taking all those big shots, looking down on people and looking down on the room and everything. The MacGuffins. And this one, I think the MacGuffin is the friend who is the guy who's obsessed
It's Hume Cronin.
murder. Yeah, Hume Cronin. He's obsessed with
Yeah.
murder and he's obsessed with killing people and all of that kind of
And
stuff.
him and the brother-in-law are always like talking about people dying and murder and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And you keep thinking that he's going to be, I kept thinking he's going to be the savior at the end. He's going to be the Deus ex machina thing, but he wasn't, which was
Well,
interesting.
he saved her from choking in the garage. He's the one
Yeah,
that comes by and hears her. Yeah.
yeah. But I think there's just a lot of misses in this, so to speak. Also, sexuality, another, I've got that in my notes as another Hitchcock theme. There's some tension between Charlie and Charlie,
Yeah.
that you're
A little
going,
Uncle Charlie's kind of lecherous.
yeah, and she's at the beginning, oh, I love Uncle Charlie.
Oh,
Uncle
I think we
Charlie's
have
so good.
telepathy. I wanted you to
Yeah.
come see me. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah. I
like,
get it.
okay, all right, sure. But I think I really had issues with the casting, mostly because as soon as I saw Clarence, or the guy who plays Clarence, I
The,
thought he was older, like a grandfather, and the wife was a widow, and that was Charlie's sister, but
because he's
she's his
older.
wife. He's so older, and it didn't seem to fit, and it didn't seem to work
And
for
they
me.
colored his hair because I remember his hair being white. When did Wonderful Life come out? Probably around the same time,
Around
right?
the same time, I
So his
think.
hair's white in that and it's black in this.
Yeah, and I thought he was just really miscast in that role. I think it's probably the best thing I've ever seen Joseph Cotten do, other than uh,
Ambersons.
uh, no, other than Citizen Kane.
Okay.
I think he's brilliant in Citizen Kane, and I think that he's really strong in this too.
Mhm.
And I like parts of the script. I like him. I like all the scenes at the dinner table are great. Like scenes, if we're talking
Well, if you're
scenes at
talking
the dinner
scenes
table.
at the dinner table, the first one I can think of is when he almost slip. Well, he does slip up and starts talking about women and like his despising fat, lazy women and stuff. And you're like,
Oh yeah.
why is he going off on this tirade? It's like he's the killer.
Obviously, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's to me ringing the ding ding bell for anybody who doubted it. Nope, he really is.
Well, it did
We're
for
thinking.
young Charlie. I think that's what convinced her for sure.
Well, I also think, but the scene before that, when he first appears, the first dinner they have, and just the way Hitchcock shoots it with seeing how the relationships develop. Everybody loves Charlie because he gives gifts, and he knows giving gifts is like his way to bribe them, except the brother-in-law, who, even though he takes the watch, is really not happy that his brother-in-law is so rich and so flaunting everything. When Charlie is all impressed with him and thinks he's just wonderful and all that. But just the choice of angles and shooting across the table sometimes and then right in a close-up sometimes. It was just really
I
Hitchcock.
think
It's
that
very
Hitchcock,
Hitchcock.
well, I think one of the mistakes in the script is that the sister didn't play into it more. I think the sister there should have been a history that the sister recognizes more.
And maybe has repressed all these years and suddenly is reminded of, oh, like when he killed that cat or
The
thing. You know what
bird,
I mean?
yeah, exactly, exactly. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. An animal,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that
yeah.
was a miss. I think overall it was a miss in just we talk about when we do movies, we talk about the flavor of a movie or the tact of it. I think are we supposed to think he is and we're just slowly watching everybody else guess, or are we still not supposed to know and question and think maybe he isn't? And he kept going back and forth instead of one side or the other and making us uh, feel that way. Like I felt from the very beginning that Charlie was the killer. He's
Well,
a
I
killer.
think they paint that picture with that first shot where he's in the room and there's cash on the bed and there's jewels. It's very seedy looking. I think that sets the table right there for a metaphor of him being the killer. Plus, he's
Yeah,
got two guys outside trying to watch him, staking him out.
right, right.
Yeah. But I
So
think you hit
I just thought it was a strange screenplay in general.
it is. But I think you hit the nail on the head. You said it in more words than what I'll say, is that you can see Hitchcock in this movie, but it's like he's not there yet. He's
Hmm.
like so close. And like I said, 3 movies later or 3 years later, when he did Notorious, when she's being poisoned, there are shots where that cup is so big in the
In the frame.
downstage and they're so far away and you're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And there are shots in this that are reminiscent of that and of North by Northwest and other great films that he did later. You could tell
Yeah.
he was getting there. He just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from screenplay too. I know he did not write this one because I saw that Thornton Wilder actually did a rewrite on it,
Isn't
which
that
I thought was
crazy?
wild. I thought that was wild.
Yeah.
But works because it's our town. This is his examination of a small town because Santa Rosa was a small town, right? And so insinuating yourself into this family and everything, I just thought there was so much potential for more, for why he was there and why he was trying to hide out there and that kind of stuff. And Hitchcock normally is really good at that. And he just had some missteps, I think, in this. I
I
also think it's
forgot.
really dated from a gender perspective. The women are always cooking and preparing and doing for, and oh, that's Papa's paper and all. But that was the time. So yeah.
I'm trying to do a quick scroll because I'm not sure what all he did for Hitchcock. I don't really see a lot unless maybe he wrote for Hitchcock's television show.
Who, Thornton Wilder?
Well, the reason I bring it up is because in my notes, I've got that Thornton Wilder was one of Alfred Hitchcock's favorite screenwriters. Maybe it was screenwriting of other things and not Hitchcock films. Maybe that's
Yeah, I'm
why.
sure.
Okay. Because it says that he went even as far as to add a special dedication to Wilder in this movie. Like this movie is
Yeah.
for Thornton Wilder. So Hitchcock thought highly of him. I always think of him as a playwright. I didn't know he was a screenplay writer.
I didn't either until I saw it on there, and so I started looking it up. And he did a lot of like Playhouse 90 stuff. He did a lot of television writing. That's theater for television stuff, BBC stuff, and stuff like that.
He
So
wrote The Matchmaker, which was Hello Dolly, basically. The play that Hello
yeah.
Dolly was made from, the musical. But it was also written by Sally Benson, who did Meet Me in St. Louis and Viva Las Vegas,
Hmm.
and Alma Hitchcock, Hitchcock's wife, who was always his collaborator, no matter how womanizing he was with his leading actresses.
Right. No matter how convoluted the relationship might have gotten. Yeah,
Right. Who
I agree.
knows? It's based on a story by Gordon MacDonald. I don't really know anything about him. I've got a little background. The project began when David Selznick's story department, the head of that department, Margaret MacDonald, that's Gordon
Hmm.
MacDonald's wife, told Hitchcock that her husband had an idea for a novel that he thought would make a really good movie. His idea was called Uncle Charlie and was based on the
Hmm.
true story of a serial killer named Earl Leonard Nelson. In the 1920s, he was known as the Gorilla Man. So you can look this up, folks. This is a real serial killer that this movie is based on.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
Hitchcock said that he considered this movie one of his favorites, that he loved the idea. The reason he considered it one of his favorites is he loved the idea of bringing menace to an otherwise idyllic town, which is where
Sure.
Thornton Wilder comes in, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah. It was a box office failure.
I
Uh,
can
it was
imagine. It would be hard, I think, to market it. because the script is so convoluted. I think it would be hard to market it.
It ranked number 81 for the year, so that's not good because they didn't make that many movies back then.
Okay.
And that's all the production stuff I have on it. Did you have anything else you want to talk about as far as production or scenes?
Well, no, well, from a production angle, yes, I would just say again that this is very Hitchcock from his lens usage, his lighting, the what he selects for his camera shots is all great.
Suspense.
I think from a scenes perspective, together with production, I love certain choices he made that other directors had not made, in my opinion, and like Charlie going in the house and you're on the porch as the camera and you follow him literally all the way up the stairs until the very end when he turns around and looks back down. And then it
Mhm.
cuts and you see young Charlie standing
At
in
the
the
bottom.
doorway. Or they look down the hallway in the upstairs room and just barely through the drapes, you see the image of Charlie standing there watching them. Stuff like that I thought was just really great. Like you said, great choices of cinematography and everything.
The foreshadowing of when I can't remember her boyfriend's name. Who was that detective's name? Whatever his name is. They're in the garage together talking and the door
Hmm.
slams. And when they go outside, or the door gets stuck or something. And
Yeah,
when they get
good.
out
Gets
and go
stuck.
outside, Charlie's outside. And you're
Yeah,
like, did he do that? Well,
yeah.
he's going to do it later. So for sure.
The little stuff like when she's not threatening him, but she's highly implying that she's suspicious of him. And he has the newspaper in his hands and he starts wringing it, like
Hmm.
twisting it, and then realizes that she sees him and puts it down below. That's when they go to the bar. I think he takes her to the bar
Yeah.
to get away from the house.
Yeah.
Um,
And I didn't mention it, but at one point he takes the ring back from her
mhm.
and she doesn't have it to prove that he's the killer. And she wants to get that ring back. So there's suspense with her looking for that ring too.
And again, I think if Hitchcock had made this 5 years later, there would have been some like denouement or something where he's innocent and they catch the real killer like a month later or something like that. Or we would have gone all in from the very beginning and we're just watching this girl slowly realize and
It would have
he'd be
just
a
gotten
little bit
deeper and
more.
deeper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I feel
think.
like it would have been more like that.
Yeah. Hitchcock, as he went through his career, was so much better at what I call subterfuge, I guess. It's layered characters that the audience knows more than the other characters in the scene do. And so like we're in on the joke.
Hmm.
We're in on the suspense, and that just makes it more suspenseful. Because you go, no, don't talk to him about that. He's a strangler.
Don't drink that coffee.
Don't drink the coffee.
Oh.
Don't put the key under the stairs. You
All right.
know,
Well,
sort of
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Dial in for murder. All right. Well, we can move on to cast real quick if you want,
Sure,
because it does
sure.
have a unique cast. I think it may be miscast now that you mention it. I really had not considered that. I've never been a big Joseph Cotten fan. I am a fan of the guy that played Clarence, but he is a little miscast in this. I started, well, obviously with Genre Week, I wouldn't have done this, but I watched The Little Foxes lately, the
Ooh,
Lillian
okay. Lillian
Hellman
Hellman.
movie
Mhm.
based on her
Based on the play.
play. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the mother in this and the daughter in this are both in that too. So I had seen them in something else recently. Teresa
Oh, okay.
Wright, who plays Charlie, young Charlie in this, and then Patricia Collinge is her name, and she played the mother in this. Both of them were nominated for Oscars for The Little Fox. They're strong. I'm just not so sure the men in this were as strong as they are. Maybe.
Well, I think Cotton was. I think he was
Okay.
very strong in this,
Yeah,
but I did
Cotton was
not
pretty good.
like.
He's very
And
menacing.
Hume Cronin is such a great actor and
It's
able to
his
play it,
debut.
but he just doesn't have a through line. There's nothing that happens
No,
to
he's a side
his
character. He's
character.
very incidental. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, let's go into it. Teresa Wright played young Charlie, she who initially idolizes this guy and then realizes he's a killer. She was in Mrs. Miniver, The Best Years of Our Lives, The Little Foxes, as I mentioned. She was in The Men, which was Marlon Brando's first movie, like the one that got him noticed, where he plays like a crippled guy from the war. He's in like a veterans hospital. Anyway, she was given the screenplay and pursued the role of Charlie due to her adoration for Hitchcock's work. Obviously, who wouldn't want to be in a Hitchcock movie?
Of course.
Joseph Cotten, as you mentioned, played Uncle Charlie. We know him from Gaslight, The Third Man. I always associate him with the Mercury Players, the Orson Welles group of actors, because he was also, as you said, in Citizen Kane and the Magnificent. I think he's in the Magnificent Ambersons. I've recorded that, but I haven't watched it yet. I recently saw him in Soylent Green. He's in that. Cotton? Yeah. No, Joseph Cotten. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he's in Soylent Green. But guess what else he's in that we both saw him in recently?
What?
The Abominable Dr. Phibes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course.
So this is not the first time we've seen him on our podcast, for sure.
No, not at all.
He had an established relationship with Hitchcock, which may have helped him get this role. Hitchcock wanted William Powell to play Uncle Charlie, but could not get him on loan from MGM. And that's how Cotten ended up in the role.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, William Powell I think, would have seemed more sinister from the very beginning.
Okay.
So that may have worked better.
There's one other person he wanted. You want to give a good guess?
Orson Welles. No, I don't know.
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant. Yeah, of course.
Because Cary Grant was in every Hitchcock movie, just about. Or at least all the big ones. Let's see. That's all I have for
Cary Grant Hitchcock film.
MacDonald Carey was Detective Jack Graham. I'm guessing that's the love interest guy that I could not remember his name. Jack.
He's the cop, the unknown cop from whatever jurisdiction allows you to go all over the country.
Did he look familiar to you?
Yes, but I couldn't place where I've seen him before.
Because you never probably sat down and watched it, but you probably saw it a dozen times. He played Dr. Tom Horton on Days of Our Lives for 30 years. 30 years he was on a soap opera.
That's quite a few seasons.
If you go and look at a picture of him older, you'll go, oh, that guy. I swear. That's what I did anyway.
Well, I have in my notes that a lot of the cast were theater. A lot of them have in their credits, even though I may not have seen it or whatever, like BBC Theater, Playhouse 90, the Schlitz Theater Hour, all this. So a lot of them did not only theater, but theater on television back in the 40s and 50s. So it's very interesting that they all came from this cred of theatrical acting. So
very Orwellian.
Yeah, very much so.
Or Orson Welles. Or Orson Welles is what I meant to say, not Wellian.
Yeah.
Orson Wellesian.
Wellesian.
Yeah. Henry Travers played Joseph Newton, young Charlie's father, who loves to read crime stories. Of course, we know him as Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life. That's the role he will always be for me that I can think of. Yeah. However, he was in The Invisible Man. He played Dr. Cranley, and he was in Mrs. Miniver. Patricia Collins
has worked with Teresa Wright before.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They I think a lot of them crossed over because Teresa Wright had worked with Patricia Collins in The Little Foxes. She played Alexandra. Patricia played Birdie, who is the more memorable role for me in Little Foxes. She's the one that has like the drinking problem and says too much at times, and the husband's really abusive to her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. If anyone has, here we are on a horror and science fiction movie talking about classic movies, but The Little Foxes, good movie. She played the mother, Charlie's mother, and Uncle Charlie's sister. I don't really have anything else other than Little Foxes for her because I think, like you said, I think she was a theatrical actress.
Yeah, theater and a lot of television for theater.
Yeah,
or theater for television.
I've got a couple that really don't matter, but Hume Cronin, you mentioned, plays Herbie
Yeah.
Hawkins, the neighbor, and he is also a crime fiction buff along with her father. This is his debut. I didn't realize that this was his debut until I
Wow. I
looked
didn't
that
either.
up. Yeah. For those of you out there that don't know, he was married to Jessica Tandy, another very beloved American
Hmm.
actress who was
Hmm.
in things like Driving Miss Daisy in her older years, but she originated the role of Blanche Dubois on Broadway in Streetcar Named Desire. And then, of course, eventually married Hume Cronin, who I remember most from Cocoon, I think.
Hmm.
I can't think of anything else he's in, but I know he's been in a million things.
Yeah.
I wrote in here, he's Mr. Jessica Tandy. That's pretty mean. And then Edna Mae Wanacott played Anne Newton. Wanacott was chosen for the role of Anne Newton by Hitchcock while they were waiting for a bus. She had no previous acting experience and had to be coached by Hitchcock's daughter between takes. She received a 7-year contract with the film, and Hitchcock believed she would have a successful acting career. She only did 8 movies.
Wow.
Who is she? I'm trying to remember.
Which one was she?
She was Anne Newton. She
And
must have
isn't
been the
that the little
librarian.
girl? I thought she was the little girl, Anne, the
Oh, the
smart one with the
sister.
glasses. The
Okay,
smart
she
one
was
with the
the little
glasses.
girl. Okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
then. That makes sense. I forgot she had a younger sister. Okay.
And Hume Cronin, going back to him for just a second, I remember him from Cocoon because both of them were in it. Jessica Tandy
That's
was
what I
in it.
said. That's all I remember him from.
And I remember him from 12 Angry Men. He was number
Mm,
9. He was juror 9 in 12 Angry Men. I remember
okay.
that. But yeah, I really like, and again, a missed opportunity. I thought she was going to end up doing something too because she was so smart, and they kept talking about how intelligent she was. She says, I didn't take down the telegram because I didn't have a pencil. When I have a house, I'm going to have a full thing of sharpened pencils everywhere.
She's very annoying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she was great.
Hitchcock
And
had other choices to play young Charlie, and I don't get this. So that's why I put it at the bottom because I want to make a note of it. But
okay,
they were sisters. That gives you a hint. 2 sisters that he would consider for young Charlie.
2 sisters. I do not know. In
Well, that's
43?
because they're too damn old. He wanted Joan Fontaine or Olivia de Havilland.
Oh, in 40? No, why?
That would have been 5 years after Gone with the Wind. And she's already like a married woman with a baby in Gone with the Wind. So
Yeah.
I think Teresa Wright was a good choice. Teresa Wright, I bought as a younger girl. I don't
Yes.
think I would
Okay.
have bought Joan Fontaine or Olivia de Havilland as a younger girl.
No. I
Not
mean,
at
if I
that
was
time.
doing Olivia de Havilland, I'd cast her as the sister, Emma. That would have worked.
Yes, and just age her up a little. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I could
Yeah, I
see
think
that.
that would work. But
Okay.
yeah, I couldn't see her as, no, not as Charlie.
There is another coincidence about this movie, and I've already hinted at something about it earlier. But Robert Quarry, does that name sound familiar?
Somewhat, but I'm not certain.
He makes his film debut in this movie as an uncredited role as a teenager in
Hmm.
what would be his only shared credit with Joseph Cotten. 3 decades
Okay.
later, Cotten and Quarry successfully play the main rivals of Dr. Phibes.
Oh, wow. That's a nice little homage.
Yes,
That's a
isn't that
cool little
cool?
kid.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
bring the horror in here. That's all I have for casting. For awards, this movie was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Story. That was Gordon MacDonald, as I mentioned earlier. It
Okay.
did not win. The National Board of Review gave Teresa Wright Best Actress, so she did win something. The National
Hmm.
Film Preservation Award, which is probably the most relevant one that I'm talking about here, is put it on their list in 1991 as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant film. The only other awards are like DVD reissue awards, but this movie is on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list.
Hmm.
I
I
would
don't know
think
if I
that
would
at
put it on
least
there,
20
but
Hitchcock movies are probably.
probably, probably, yeah. Overall, I would, yeah. The only I'm looking at my notes to see if there's
Sure.
any last thing. The only last thing is, oh my God, I think the music is way too much in this movie.
I didn't like the music that much either.
All the way through, it is way too much. Again, I think something that Hitchcock tamped down later and knew right where to use it, like he does in The Birds and Psycho and even North by Northwest. This huge orchestral music, but using it in the right place at the right time. Did you see the cameo? Do you know where his cameo is in this? Because he's in his movies.
I can't remember.
He was the person who was winning the card game on the train,
I figured it was on the train.
and they passed him by and they show his hand, and he has all the spades, including the ace in his hand.
That's
So,
funny.
yeah.
As far as trivia, I have a couple things I'm not going to mention because they tie into the serial killer, but there's lots of little end things that they purposefully put in the script that really happen. Like when he
Okay.
tells his landlady she'll never see him again. Well, that the killer really did do that, that kind of
Oh, that
thing.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like little details in the screenplay that actually happened in real life. And it's so long ago that we don't even remember it. But one
Hmm.
thing I do have is that, and I'll just read this really quickly. I was talking about Hitchcock saying this was his favorite movie. In
Hmm.
1964, he did an interview with something called Telescope, and the host is named Fletcher Markle. He noted, Mr. Hitchcock, most critics have always considered Shadow of a Doubt, which you made in 1943, as your finest film. Hitchcock replied immediately, me too. Markle then said, that is your opinion of it still? And Hitchcock replied, oh, no question. At the time, his most recent work was Marnie. Then
Mm.
later interviewed by Francois Truffaut, Hitchcock denied the suggestion that Shadow of a Doubt was his favorite. But in the audio interview with Truffaut, Hitchcock confirmed that it was his favorite and later reiterated that Shadow of a Doubt was his favorite film
Mm.
in his interview with Mike Douglas in 1969. And in his interview with Dick Cavett in 1972, Hitchcock's daughter also said that his favorite film was Shadow of a Doubt. So there's a lot of weird
Interesting.
back and forth going on here, is it or is it not?
Right. And also, I don't know why he would think that based on his other work. Such a
Psycho,
Well, yeah, or even North by Northwest, which a lot of people think is his best.
Rear
Uh,
Window,
39 Steps, even before this, I think
Strangers
is
on a
better.
Train.
Yeah,
There's so many others I would choose before I would choose this one. Not that this is a bad movie. It's to me, I don't know
yeah.
why. Unless this was the movie where he felt he was getting his groove on. Maybe.
Maybe this was the energy one, or maybe this whole cast clicked with him because certain times he had trouble with casts
Yeah,
or
it could have been memories
issues.
of this making this film,
Yeah,
not necessarily the film itself.
I do think all the ones we just mentioned are keys
Yeah.
because of all the Hitchcock tropes in them,
Oh,
even
that's so funny
trains.
because I don't have any keys.
Well, because he's got those tropes of not only the ones I mentioned, but on a train and trains being transportation modes and everything. I have a few keys. One of them is the one that came first as soon as this movie was over and the credits was rolling was Night Must Fall, the play.
Yeah, I
Um,
see
I,
that big time.
I don't think it's ever been turned into a
It
movie. I
has.
need
It's a
to
movie.
do it,
Yeah.
but
It's an old movie. It's on TCM.
But it's a play that you and I did. It's considered the first psychological thriller play ever. And it is this entire setup of, is this guy a killer or not? And it's highly suspicious that he is.
Yeah.
But the young girl is the one that starts suspecting.
But she
And
also
so,
has an attraction to him.
correct.
Yeah.
So it reminded me a lot of Night Must Fall.
Yeah.
Um,
I could see that.
I've got Dial M, of course, because it's another one of those where even as a even as a excuse me, even as a
Bless you.
Hitchcock film, we know who the killer is, and the other characters don't. And we're watching them slowly figure it out. In Dial M, we watch him the entire time, Ray Milland's character. And
Wait Until Dark. Not really.
not, no, because we're mostly following her and Wait Until Dark, and she doesn't know they're bad or not.
And they're
But
not
yeah,
killers, they're heroin dealers or whatever. Really.
right.
Yeah.
I've got Blue Velvet because Blue Velvet has been written about as it was David Lynch's attempt to take horror
Into
into or
the
suspense into a small
suburbia.
town.
Right.
Yes, into hometown America. And by that token, Stephen King is so good at putting killers and villains and monsters right among us in our small town, whether it's vampires and or
Actually, that's
daddies.
a great key, especially now because he writes a lot more about this stuff now than he does supernatural. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more of the psychological thrillers kind of
Or
feels.
killers. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That's all the ones I've got. I don't know necessarily if this movie in particular influenced a lot of others. It probably did, and I just haven't collated any of it or seen any of it. It obviously influenced Hitchcock if he's saying it's his favorite, but it is, but it's not.
Right.
So,
It's like, what is he doing? I don't understand that at all.
yeah, yeah. So, anyway,
My favorite film is Family Plot.
no, it's not. No, it's not at all.
Bruce Stern and
Uh,
Karen Black versus Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart. Well, yeah, I guess I don't have any keys, but like you said, it's because every Hitchcock is really a key. Most of
mhm.
his work that I can think of, anyway, would be a key to
Yeah.
this.
And I'm sure there were other directors and people that were inspired by this suspenseful telling. Hitchcock, I don't think will ever be trumped in suspense. He's just so good at letting us in on it before the other characters that we're watching. And he takes such a voyeuristic approach to everything that we are forced to watch what he wants us to watch. Brian De Palma wanted to be Hitchcock so bad,
I
but he
know. That's
never
a good
quite.
one. That's a good one, though. That's actually a good key, Brian De Palma. And I'm sure there's some Brian De Palma films that we could think of too, like Body Double or something as
Yeah,
well.
Body Double, Dress to Kill. Yeah, maybe. But just because he always wanted to be that way, but just didn't
Exactly.
have the artistic bent that Hitchcock. Hitchcock was just such a genius of cinematography.
And he would take the sexual further than Hitchcock would. Hitchcock would
Oh yeah.
imply it, and De Palma would show it,
Yeah.
basically.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I wish you could. I really wish I'd have picked it Notorious instead.
I know. I wish I
Because it
now
is
got to go see
so
it.
great when you see them talking, the mother, the son, and Ingrid Bergman, and they're
Uh-huh.
sitting there having tea or coffee, and then there's just this abrupt cut to a cup that is as big as your screen almost, and you just see them in the background. You're like,
Yeah.
damn, that is a great shot.
Hmm.
And I think he actually used a bigger cup. Like it
Sure.
wasn't the
Probably.
same size cup. He like used a very large cup just to make it
He,
even more pronounced.
yeah, built a prop that's bigger so
Yes,
he would
yes.
look. Yeah.
It was great. Anyway,
Well,
that's I
that's
guess
what.
all I have to say about our first. It's not our first venture into Hitchcock because we have done Psycho, but it's our first that's a non-horror Hitchcock. So
Correct. Correct.
because we did The Birds too.
And that's what we think. And we would love to know what you guys out there think. Do you like Shadow of a Doubt? Are we wrong? Are we right? Is it a misstep, but still worth watching? That's where we landed with it. But we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a comment down below, write and review us. Even if you pop on Apple and just give us a 1-star review, it does any of that helps and helps other people. If you like what you saw today and you're new, you can go to the website and see all of our past episodes. We've been doing it for like 7 seasons now, so there's quite a bit. You can find your favorites in there and listen to us and let us know on that. We also have a Patreon, of course, which is a way you can support us here at the podcast, Johnny Has the Keys. And we have some free material there, but also some subscriber material that's pretty cool, including
And
other podcasts.
a whole bunch of new merchandise too. I've got
Whole
some really
bunch.
cool stuff up there as well.
Yeah, get your new merch and everything else. And Tim, I guess next week we'll be doing some more sci-fi stuff, but in a different bent.
Yeah, I think that we are getting back into our normal territory. We just veered off a couple episodes. And yeah, well, it's definitely still classic, but it's definitely sci-fi as well.
Definitely science fiction. Yeah. And it's a double feature.
It is a double feature.
That'll be fun.
And then when we get back to horror, I'm going to kick your ass.
Probably. All right, my friend. I'll see you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.